The English exam is fast approaching, and in today's video I'll be sharing 5 tips that I have for the end of year exam. These aren't long-term strategies or big preparation processes, but kind of those little polishing off tips and just some things to keep in mind for the actual exam. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Darren and I'm a third-year medical student studying at Monash University here in Melbourne, Australia. Firstly, to the Year 12s, congratulations on graduating. It's a really impressive achievement and it's just really significant to have completed all these years of schooling. It may have sunk in for you already, or it may sink in at the end of the year when all these exams are done, but nevertheless, congratulations. With exams looming, if you're looking for sort of more long-term preparation processes, feel free to check out some of my videos in previous years which tackle some of the common exams. But I also think it's important to focus on those details in the couple days to week leading up to the exam. And that's what I'll be focusing on today. And I'll be sharing 5 of those details that relate to the VCE English exam. Enjoy. The first tip is to really clarify to yourself how you want to distribute your time, both in reading time and in writing time. The main piece of advice I would impart here is that you need to have a reason for distributing your time the way you do. So really think about it. Think about what sections are difficult for you, which sections you want to finish on, how you can best make use of reading time, and then allocate your time accordingly and go into the exam with a very purposeful way of spending your time. I'll share my timings, but if you've sat some practice exams before, you know that timing is so important. You have 3 essays, 3 hours. Extra 10 minutes here and there is actually quite costly and can really mess up your flow, especially when some topics are harder than others. For my particular timings, for the 3-hour writing part, I would firstly spend 50 minutes on argument analysis. The reason for this is that it flows on nicely from reading time, and also it's a fairly systematic section. You kind of move through your intro, your analysis of the quotes, and into your conclusion. I think it's a bit more systematic than the others, and so I thought 50 minutes would suffice. Next, I would complete the comparative, and I gave myself an hour and 10 minutes. Comparative for me was the most difficult section, or the most potentially difficult section, because I had to match 2 texts together, and also if the topic is a bit harder, it becomes even more difficult to match the moments together. And so 1 hour, 10 minutes, and I placed it in the middle because I didn't really want to finish and be really time pressured for a section that I wasn't as comfortable with. And the final section and the final hour of my time was spent on the text response. I knew my text, The Women of Troy, really well. It's quite a short play. I knew everything that happened. So I also knew that even if the topic was quite difficult, I just kind of had to go through the play and I knew it well. And so I had a bit more confidence in adjusting the time. So even if I arrived at this last section and I was a little pushed for time, I knew that I would much prefer having the text response to complete in a bit of pressure rather than the other sections. As with reading time, I would split the time into 5 minutes and then 10 minutes. The first 5 minutes, I would just flip through the booklet and look at the topics. Everyone's curious what the topics are. Just have a look and you may identify a topic you're really comfortable with, but if not, that's completely fine as well. It happens. And then I would spend the next 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of reading time on argument analysis, doing the things I usually do. So grouping the paragraphs in the article together so I knew how I would structure my body paragraphs, and then sort of writing the intro in my head and identifying all those context, tone, contention, audience in my head as well. Tip number 2, plan for bad topics. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, I think it has kind of 2 aspects to it. Firstly, make sure to plan in your preparation. I found planning really helpful for kind of covering my bases for the topics because I had a pretty fundamental knowledge of the text and I had written some essays. I was just kind of worried the breadth of the topics might surprise me. And so planning, especially for topics that you think, even for topics you think are, that won't come up or that's a terrible topic, just give it a go, plan it. It may come up, who knows, but at least you've planned it at home when you have a lot of time and you kind of have some way of tackling the topic. The second aspect of this is if you go into the exam and literally the 2 topics are absolutely terrible. So firstly, it's very rare. Well, it may happen that 1 topic is terrible, but please let me know if it ends up happening that 2 topics are both terrible. But in the moment when you receive those topics, try not to become too flustered. Try to sort of calm yourself down and say, okay, these are the 2 topics I have and I'm going to have to deal with them. And there are a couple ways you can go about this. You can think to yourself, everyone has to write this topic, right? It's not like you are getting some of the worst topics and some other people are getting the better topics. Everyone has this same very mediocre topic. And so now you can really control how you cope with it. And that will help you do well in the exam, even if the topic is not that good. And from here, if you have a good knowledge of the text, then it's useful to kind of just go through the text. So think about the characters, think about what happens in the text, and then think about which of those moments you can slot into the topic. Because there will be some moments, but you might not identify them quickly at first because of the fact that the topic's a bit weird. But if you go through the text in your mind, you will find that some of the moments you didn't think would link perfectly may actually work for the topic. So don't become flustered, stay calm, and just really think to yourself, this is an opportunity and let's see what I can make of this. My third piece of advice is to value thinking time. It's much preferable to spend time carefully constructing your arguments, thinking about your contention, and picking out good moments that you're happy with, rather than rushing and just trying to write the entire time. Of course, ideally in an exam, it's a topic you're pretty comfortable with, you have ideas that flow well through there, and you're writing continuously for 3 hours, it comes out beautifully, and it's just a really lovely 3 essays. This is an ideal situation. It's also a very rare situation, and I don't think it's one people should get hung up on, because a lot of the factors that can contribute to that are not really ones that we as students have any control over. If you see a topic that you need to think a little bit more about, I would advise you in that moment not to be flustered, not to feel rushed and think to yourself, I got to start writing, otherwise I'll write less than I usually do and I'll write an insufficient amount. Instead, I think it's good to think to yourself, I would also think to myself that, I have all the time in the world. I'm very satisfied to just pick out my moments, spend time really thinking about the topic, thinking about what it's asking of me, and then find moments I'm very happy with, find quotes that I want to analyze, and then construct my essay carefully and nicely. I think having that really nicely structured essay with components that you're happy with is much better than just rushing and trying to hit some kind of page mark. The other reason I think this kind of patient approach is good is because most people underestimate, or most people disproportionately believe that they're writing too little. From my experience tutoring and from my experience in year 12, seeing my friends, I found that most people write a pretty normal amount or more than a sufficient amount, and very rarely do people write an amount where you look at it and you say, that's much too little. So when you see a topic and you feel like you need a bit of time to think. Take your time, be patient. You have all the time in the world to construct a really nice essay. The fourth tip, and my second last piece of advice, is to do what you normally do in the exam. And on the flip side, don't try anything weird in the exam. I think the exam is a culmination of everything you've practiced. It's a culmination of those timings you developed, those analyses you've improved over the year, those moments you've picked and analyzed before. It's a culmination of all that. But I think it's also easy in the stressful situation of the exam. Some people may get a bit ambitious and think to themselves, I've never analyzed this moment before. Let me try analyzing here. Or, I'm writing this great text response essay. Why don't I spend another extra 15 minutes on it? I'm sure the comparative looks easier. It'll be fine. I don't think the exam is a good place to try new things. It may have paid off in the past because it's just hit and miss. Sometimes it will pay off. But I think by trying new things and trying to seek out these new things, I feel like you're not really trusting yourself and you're kind of undermining your own preparation. If you go into the exam and you think to yourself, I'm going to execute everything I've practiced, all those things I've worked on and sharpened over the months leading up to the exam, this is the chance for me to show them off. I think that's when you really back yourself and when you really trust your preparation. And if you focus on all those components that you've worked on, then the results will naturally come. So do what you normally do in the exam and just execute what you've always practiced. My final tip is that when the exam's over, it's over. I remember beating myself up quite a bit after my specialist maths exam in year 12, especially because the answers came out, I think, on the day of the exam, and so I knew where I went wrong. And I was thinking about it at night, I was thinking about it the next day, and I just remember thinking that, how could I have made those mistakes? And, I remember doing that question in the moment and making that mistake. But I don't think that was really helpful for me. It wasn't helpful for me at all. It sort of emotionally was a bit annoying, and also just wasn't practically helpful at all, dwelling in that kind of upset state. And so I don't think it's really helpful if you've done really poorly or you don't really like how you did in an exam to wallow in a lot of upset and negative emotion. Some people may find it motivating, but I think if you haven't found it motivating in the past, no use doing it in the exam. One thing that may help is taking objective steps from a non-optimal exam and taking it towards the next exam. So think to yourself, okay, for that exam, I sort of went off my practice exam timings because I'm too excited. I was too perfectionist about getting the first couple questions right. So then for the next exam, I'm going to stick to my timings no matter what and be okay if I make a couple mistakes on the first couple questions. And I think those kind of objective steps can help because they are things you can take with you into the next exam, and they may help you with dealing with the aftermath of a poor exam. I also don't think it's the best to revel in a really excellent exam performance as well. If you think you did awesome, you thought you smashed it there, and to really rejoice in that. There are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, some exams don't have answers, so you don't actually know if you did well. Secondly, it may breed complacency because you thought you did well, you're kind of living off this high into the next exam. And the third reason, probably the most important one in a way, is that I think it's really hard to just take joy out of the good exams and then not take any negative feelings from the bad exams. I think if you derive a lot of emotion from your exam performance, then it's likely you get really happy, but you also get really sad when the exam didn't go as well as you wanted. So I think especially when you have a lot of exams, especially when you have holidays afterwards as well, not to go too up and down, but to kind of ride the exams as they come. And okay, that exam was all right, couple of things to learn from, and I'll implement those in the next exam. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments box below. Go smash those exams, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.